Have you ever realized that the people you love most see you as nothing more than a wallet? That moment when it all becomes crystal clear, when you discover you've spent years, decades even, confusing financial dependence with love? I'm 71 years old, and it took me until last month to understand that my only son never loved me at all. He loved my money, and his wife, she didn't even pretend otherwise. But here's what they didn't expect. This old woman still had some fight left in her. Let me tell you about the phone call that changed everything. Actually, it wasn't even a phone call. It was what happened before I could make one. Picture this. I'm standing in my own living room, phone in hand, about to dial my son Max to ask about final wedding details. I've been planning for weeks, you see. I had my dress picked out, a beautiful pale pink number that cost me $200. I'd been setting aside money for their wedding gift, $1,000 I'd saved from my pension. I'd even called my sister Diana in Chicago to share the good news. My baby boy was getting married, and I was going to be there for the most important day of his life. But before I could even finish dialing, my daughter-in-law, Lena, looked up from my sofa, the one I'd bought for their apartment, and said with this smile that made my blood freeze, "Oh, we already got married yesterday. We only invited special people." Special people. Those two words hit me like I'd been slapped across the face with a frozen hand. For 3 years, I had paid their rent. $500 every single month, like clockwork. $18,000 total, if you're counting. And I was counting now. Believe me, I'd furnished their entire apartment. Every stick of furniture they owned, I had purchased. When their refrigerator was empty, I filled it. When they had emergencies, I was the emergency fund. When they wanted something nice, something special, something they couldn't afford, they called Mom. Good old Mom, reliable Mom, Mom with the checkbook and the guilt, and the desperate need to feel needed. And I wasn't special enough to attend my own son's wedding. I stood there holding that phone like it weighed 1,000 pounds, watching my son avoid looking at me while his wife made herself comfortable on furniture I paid for, in a house I was standing in that I owned, wearing clothes I'd probably helped finance. The pink dress hung in my closet at home, useless now. The new shoes I'd bought sat in their box, never to be worn for their intended purpose. All those weeks of planning, of imagining myself in the wedding photos, of picturing that proud mother moment gone, erased, because I wasn't special. I want you to understand something. This wasn't just about missing a wedding. This was about finally seeing the truth I'd been avoiding for years. My son Max, my only child, the boy I'd raised alone after my husband Robert died, had become a man I didn't recognize. Or maybe, and this thought hurt worse, maybe he'd always been this person, and I just refused to see it because seeing it would mean admitting I'd failed as a mother. A week passed. 7 days of me trying to process what had happened, trying to make sense of how my own child could do this to me. And then Lena called. Her voice was completely different now, no more confidence, no more that casual cruelty. Now she sounded desperate, almost panicked. "Renata, the rent is overdue. The landlord is threatening to evict us if we don't pay this week. You forgot to make the transfer." I hadn't forgotten. For 3 years, I'd never once forgotten. I'd canceled my own plans, eaten cheap meals, denied myself small pleasures, all to make sure that transfer went through every month. I'd run to the bank in rain, in heat, in the middle of my own errands, because God forbid Max and Lena should have to worry about something as mundane as paying their own rent. But that week, I hadn't made the transfer, and it wasn't because I forgot. The silence on my end must have scared her because she kept talking, her voice getting higher and more strained. "Renata, are you there? We really need this. The landlord isn't joking around. We could lose the apartment. I let her wait a few more seconds. Let her feel just a fraction of the anxiety I'd carried for years, wondering if I was doing enough, giving enough, being enough. Then I spoke, and my voice was calmer than I'd heard it in months. Lena, didn't I warn you that I only help special people? The silence that followed was so complete, I could hear my own heartbeat in my ears. For the first time in 3 years, it wasn't me who was trembling. It was her. Renata, I don't understand, she stammered, and I could hear the panic creeping into her voice. We've always been special to you. You're like a second mom to me. Lies. Sweet, calculated lies wrapped in that syrupy voice she only used when she needed money. The same voice she'd used to ask me for $800 last month for personal expenses. Money that apparently went toward the white wedding dress I'd seen in the photos on social media. The photos I wasn't supposed to see. The photos showing Lena's parents beaming next to the bride and groom. Her siblings raising champagne glasses and toasts. A full wedding, not the intimate ceremony. Just us and the witnesses that Max had claimed. I'd seen everything I wasn't meant to see. And now I couldn't unsee it. That night, after I hung up on Lena, I sat on my bed and cried. But these weren't the tears I'd cried so many times before, tears of loneliness, of confusion, of wondering what I'd done wrong. These were tears of rage, of accumulated frustration from years of swallowing my hurt and pretending everything was fine. I cried for all the times I'd felt my love was a burden to them, my presence an inconvenience, my money the only valuable thing about me. I cried for the foolish woman I'd been, the woman who'd lost herself trying to be indispensable to people who saw her as completely dispensable. But by morning, something had shifted. When I woke up, I felt different, harder, clearer. I looked at myself in the bathroom mirror and saw the same tired eyes, the same lines and wrinkles that came from 71 years of living. But there was something new in my expression, a determination I hadn't seen in years, maybe decades. Something that had been buried under compliance and people-pleasing and the desperate need to be loved. I made my coffee like I had every morning for 40 years. But this time, I didn't check my phone hoping for a message from Max. I didn't rehearse what I'd say when he finally called to apologize. For the first time in longer than I could remember, I was my own first priority. I sat at my kitchen table and took out my checkbook, my bank statements, every financial record I had. I wanted to see the damage in actual numbers. I needed to quantify my own foolishness, rent, $500 a month for 36 months. $18,000 food and groceries, roughly $200 a month. Another $7,200, birthday gifts, Christmas presents, anniversary gifts. At least $3,000, Lena's medical emergencies. $800, the car loan they never paid back. $2,500, air conditioner repair for their apartment. $600, living room furniture. $1,200. The total came to $33,400.33. $1,400 of my late husband's inheritance. Money from my pension. Savings I'd accumulated penny by penny over decades of honest work. All of it poured into keeping two fully capable adults comfortable while they treated me like an annoyance at best. An ATM at worst. My phone rang. Max's name lit up the screen. Normally, my heart would race. I'd scramble to answer, hoping this would be the call where he finally saw me as a person again. But this time, I let it ring. Once, twice, 3 times. Then silence. 10 minutes later, it rang again. Lena this time. I let that one go to voicemail too, then a text from Max. Mom, please answer. We need to talk. I deleted it without responding. At 2 in the afternoon. I did something I hadn't done in months. I went for a walk with no purpose except to walk. No errands for Max and Lena. No rushing to the bank for transfers. No picking up groceries for their refrigerator. Just me walking through my neighborhood, remembering what it felt like to have time that belonged only to myself. I passed the park where I used to take Max when he was little. I could still picture that sweet boy with the gap-toothed smile, running to me with his arms out, telling me I was the best mom in the world. When had he changed? Or had I changed, transforming from a mother into a source of funding? When did I start believing I had to purchase his affection? I found myself standing outside my bank. Through the glass door, I could see Mr. Klein, the branch manager. He'd processed every one of my transfers to Max and Lena for 3 years. He'd watched my account drain month after month while theirs filled up. He waved when he saw me, and before I could talk myself out of it, I walked inside. "Mr. Klein," I said, walking straight to his office, "I need to cancel all the automatic transfers I have set up." He looked genuinely surprised. For 3 years, those transfers had been as predictable as sunrise. "Are you sure, Mrs. Richter? Is everything all right?" His concern seemed more genuine than anything Max had shown me in months. "What happened," I told him, "is that I finally opened my eyes. I want everything canceled. And I also need to know how to protect my accounts so no one else can access my money." While Mr. Klein processed the paperwork, my phone rang constantly. Max, Lena, Max again. It was like they had some kind of radar that detected when their income stream was in danger. I turned the phone completely off. "Mrs. Richter," Mr. Klein said as he handed me the final documents, "I hope you don't mind me saying this, but I've watched you be incredibly generous with your family for years now. I just want to make sure you're not being pressured or coerced into making these changes." This man, who barely knew me beyond banking transactions, was showing more care for my well-being than my own son. I'm not being pressured. "Mr. Klein, if anything, I finally stopped pressuring myself. When I left the bank, I felt physically lighter, like I'd been carrying an enormous weight, and had finally set it down. For the first time in 3 years, my money was entirely mine. I had no obligations to people who saw me as a resource instead of a human being. I thought about all the things I hadn't done because I was too busy financing Max and Lena's life. The trips I canceled to save money for their rent. The friends I'd lost touch with because I was always available for their emergencies. The hobbies I'd abandoned because every dollar I spent on myself was a dollar less for their needs. When I got home, there were 3 cars parked in front of my house. Max's car, Lena's car, and one I didn't recognize. Through my front windows, I could see movement inside my house. They were in my house. They had keys I'd given them years ago when I still believed in trust and family and mutual respect. My blood went cold. But I also felt something else, anger. Pure, clarifying anger. I took a deep breath and opened my front door. The scene inside will stay with me forever. Max sat on my sofa with his head in his hands, looking like a man whose world was falling apart. Lena paced back and forth like a trapped animal. And an older man I'd never seen before was at my dining table, going through my papers. My personal documents. My private financial records. What is happening here? My voice came out louder than I intended, echoing off the walls. All 3 of them turned to look at me, and for a moment, I was the intruder in my own home. Lena spoke first, her voice urgent and desperate. "Renata, thank God you're here. We need to talk. This is Mr. Fisher. He's from a law firm we consulted about your situation." "My situation?" I asked, my voice strangely calm. "What situation would that be?" "I'm perfectly fine." Max finally looked up at me, and I saw something in his eyes I'd never seen before, not concern for me, but fear for himself. "Financial panic. Mom, we went to the bank and they told us you canceled all the transfers. Mr. Klein said you blocked our access to your accounts." "Why would you do that?" Mr. Fisher, a man in his 50s wearing an expensive gray suit, approached me with his hand extended. Mrs. Richter, I'm Dr. Fisher, a family law attorney. Your children are very concerned about your mental well-being and have asked me to assess the situation. I didn't shake his hand. Instead, I walked directly to my dining table and gathered up all my documents that he'd been reviewing without my permission. These are my private papers, I said clearly. You have no right to look at them without my consent. Mom, Max interrupted, using that condescending tone he perfected lately. We're worried about you. Your behavior has been very strange. You've cut us off financially without any explanation. You won't answer our calls. We think you might need professional help. Lena moved closer, trying to take my hand with fake tenderness. Renata, honey, we know you're stressed. Maybe the loneliness is affecting you more than you realize. At your age, episodes of confusion are completely normal. The word confusion rang in my ears like an alarm. Now I understood why they'd brought a lawyer. They weren't here to help me. They were here to have me declared mentally incompetent so they could take control of my finances. The same woman who told me I wasn't special enough for her wedding was now trying to paint me as a senile old woman who couldn't manage her own affairs. I am not confused, I said with a firmness that surprised even me. I'm clearer than I've been in years, and all three of you are going to leave my house right now. Mr. Fisher used his professional lawyer voice, the kind designed to sound reasonable and authoritative. Mrs. Richter, I understand you feel overwhelmed, but your children have the right to intervene if they believe your ability to make financial decisions is impaired. They've documented several concerning behaviors. Concerning behaviors? I actually laughed, a harsh sound that startled all of them. Like deciding my money belongs to me. Like choosing not to finance the lives of two adults who treat me like garbage. Lena's face flushed red. We never treated you badly. You're part of our family. Everything you have will belong to us eventually anyway. We're just trying to speed up the process. There it was. The truth, naked and ugly. Everything I had would belong to them one day, so why wait? In their minds, I was already dead. They were just collecting their inheritance early. It didn't matter if I had 10 years left or 10 days. I was just an obstacle between them and my bank account. Out, I said, pointing at the door. All three of you, get out of my house now. Max stood up, his face twisted with childish anger. Mom, we can't just leave. We have obligations. The rent, car payments, the credit card you co-signed for. You can't just cut us off without warning. I can't? My voice rose for the first time. Who says I can't? For 3 years, I've paid rent on an apartment that's not in my name. I've filled a refrigerator in a home where I'm not welcome. I've financed a life that clearly has no room for me. Mr. Fisher pulled a folder from his briefcase and placed it on my table. Mrs. Richter, we've prepared some documents that could facilitate this transition. A power of attorney that would allow Max and Lena to manage your finances more efficiently. Just temporarily, until you feel better. I picked up the folder and, without even opening it, threw it directly into my trash can. The only transition happening here is you three transitioning to the front door. Lena started crying, but they weren't real tears. They were tears of frustration and rage. You can't do this to us, Renata. We were counting on you. We made plans based on your support. We bought things, took on obligations because we knew we could rely on you. Obligations based on my money, I said. Not on my well-being. Not on my happiness. Not on my company. Just my money. And now that I've decided my money is better spent on my own life, suddenly I'm a confused old woman who needs a guardian. Max tried to approach me, but I stepped back. He wasn't the little boy who'd run into my arms anymore. He was a 35-year-old man who saw his mother as an obstacle to financial comfort. Mom, we made mistakes, he said in a voice that was supposed to sound apologetic. The wedding was a misunderstanding. Lena was stressed. I was under pressure. We can fix this if you'll just be reasonable. Reasonable. Be reasonable. The words tasted like poison. Being reasonable means continuing to pay for your life while you treat me like a stranger. I asked. It means pretending it doesn't hurt that I was excluded from the most important day of my son's life. Mr. Fisher packed up his papers with practiced efficiency. Mrs. Richter, this isn't over. Your family has legal options. If you're truly making irrational decisions due to mental health issues, a judge can determine that you need guardianship. The threat was clear. This wasn't just a manipulative family visit. This was the opening move in a legal battle. Mr. Fisher, I said, looking directly into his eyes, I suggest you do your research before threatening a 71-year-old woman who has managed her finances flawlessly for 40 years. A woman who raised her son alone after her husband's death, who worked honorably until retirement, who, until last week, was financially supporting two completely capable adults for no reason other than misguided love. Lena's tears stopped abruptly. Her face hardened, showing me who she really was beneath the act. This won't stay like this, Renata. We have rights. We have lawyers, too. Perfect, I replied. Hire all the lawyers you want. With your own money, of course, because mine is no longer available to finance your legal tantrums. The three of them walked to the door with wounded dignity, like people unused to being told no. Before leaving, Max turned back one last time. Mom, this is going to end very badly for you. You're going to wind up alone with no one to take care of you when you really need it. His words were meant to scare me, to make me reconsider, to pull me back into line with guilt and fear. Instead, I felt a strange calm. Max, I said with deep sadness, but also crystal clarity, I'm already alone. The difference is that now it's my choice, not your neglect. I closed the door behind them and stood in my living room, surrounded by the most beautiful silence I'd heard in years. It was the silence of freedom. That night I couldn't sleep, but not from sadness or regret. It was adrenaline from having reclaimed control of my own life. I lay awake planning my next steps like a general preparing for battle. If Max and Lena wanted a war, I'd give them one. But it would be fought with intelligence, not emotion. At 6 the next morning, I was dressed and ready. My first stop was the office of attorney Mr. Weber, a man I'd met years ago while handling my husband's will. Unlike the lawyer Max and Lena had brought, Mr. Weber had an impeccable reputation and specialized in protecting elderly rights. Mrs. Richter, he said after I explained everything, what your children attempted yesterday is more common than you'd think. It's called elder financial abuse, and it's a federal crime. The fact that they entered your home without permission and reviewed your private documents also constitutes a violation. His words both calmed and frightened me. They calmed me because they confirmed I wasn't crazy. What had happened was genuinely abusive. They frightened me because I realized the situation was more serious than I'd thought. We need to document everything, Mr. Weber continued. Every transfer, every gift, every time they pressured you for money. We'll also update your will to protect your assets from future manipulation attempts. We spent 3 hours reviewing my financial records. Mr. Weber whistled when he saw the total. Mrs. Richter, with $33,400, you could have lived comfortably, traveled, enjoyed your retirement. Instead, you completely financed the lives of 2 adults who didn't even respect you enough to invite you to their wedding. When I left Mr. Weber's office, I had a complete action plan. First, change all my locks. Second, install a security system with cameras. Third, open a new bank account at a different bank where they had no contacts. Fourth, Start living the life I'd postponed for years. My next stop was the hardware store. The owner, Mr. Summer, had known me for years because I was constantly buying things to fix problems in Max and Lena's apartment. Mrs. Richter, what brings you in today? Another emergency with your son? No, Mr. Summer. This time it's for my own house. I need to change all the locks, and I want the best quality available. He looked surprised but asked no questions. While I was choosing locks, his son Ethan, who installed security systems, happened to stop by. It felt like providence. Ethan, I said, I also need surveillance cameras installed. The complete system. Price is not an issue. While they prepared everything for installation the next day, I received a call from an unknown number. It was Lena calling from someone else's phone because I'd blocked her number. Renata, it's Lena. Please don't hang up. We need to talk like civilized adults. Talk, I said flatly. Listen, I understand you're upset about the wedding. It was a mistake. Max and I discussed it, and we want to make it up to you. How about we have a special dinner to celebrate our marriage with you? We could do it at your house, cook together like we used to. The manipulation was so transparent, it was almost insulting. Lena, how much rent do you owe exactly? The silence confirmed I'd hit the target. Well, it's 2 months. $1,000 total. But I'm not calling just for that, Renata. We genuinely miss you. Do you miss me or my money? Both, she said with surprising honesty. Renata, I won't lie. Yes, we need your financial help. But we also love you. You're important to us. If I'm so important, I said, why wasn't I important enough for your wedding? Why am I not important enough to get a phone call that doesn't ask for money? When was the last time you called just to see how I was doing? Silence. We both knew the answer. Never. Lena, I'm only going to explain this once. For 3 years, you've treated me like an ATM with feelings. You used me, ignored me, humiliated me. And finally, you insulted me in the worst possible way. Now that the money's stopped, you suddenly discover you love me. Renata, please. There is no please. You made your choice when you decided I wasn't special enough for your wedding. Now I'm making mine. I hung up and turned off my phone completely. That afternoon, I went to the beauty salon for the first time in over a year. I've been canceling appointments because Max or Lena always needed something urgent, or because the money I'd set aside for myself became their emergency fund. Mrs. Richter, my favorite stylist, Cynthia, exclaimed. I thought you'd forgotten about us. I didn't forget you, Cynthia. I forgot that I deserve to be pampered too. I got the full treatment cut, color, manicure, pedicure. For the first time in years, I spent money on myself without guilt. While Cynthia worked on my hair, she talked about her life, her children, her dreams. It was refreshing to have a conversation that didn't revolve around Max and Lena's endless needs. You look beautiful, Mrs. Richter, she said when finished. But more than that, you look free. Did something good happen? Yes, Cynthia. I finally learned to say no. When I arrived home that evening, there was an unfamiliar car parked in front. My heart raced, thinking Max and Lena had returned with reinforcements. But as I approached, I saw an elderly woman sitting on my porch steps. Mrs. Richter. She asked as I got out of my car. Yes, can I help you? I'm Eleanor Brooks. I live next door. We've been neighbors for years, though we've never really talked. Yesterday, I heard very loud voices coming from your house, and I was worried. Is everything all right? Her genuine concern touched me deeply. Here was a stranger showing more interest in my well-being than my own son. Come in, Mrs. Brooks. I'll make coffee, and I'll tell you a story you won't believe. Over coffee, I told her everything. Eleanor listened without interrupting, occasionally nodding. When I finished, her eyes were filled with tears. Mrs. Richter, she said, you did the right thing. I went through something similar with my daughter 5 years ago. I thought it was my duty to finance her adult life. I believed she wouldn't love me if I didn't give her money. What happened? I cut off the money when I realized they only called when they needed something. At first, it was terrible. Threats, emotional blackmail, guilt trips. But after 6 months, my daughter called with a genuine apology. Now we have a real relationship based on love, not money. Her words gave me hope and confirmed I'd made the right decision. Do you think Max and Lena will understand eventually? Maybe yes, maybe no, she answered honestly. But that's no longer your responsibility. Mrs. Richter, your responsibility now is to live your own life. That night, for the first time in 3 years, I went to bed without worrying about whether Max and Lena had money for rent or food or their latest swim. I went to bed thinking about myself, my plans, my future. And I slept better than I had in years. The next morning, Ethan and Mr. Summer arrived at 8 to change the locks and install the security system. While they worked, my phone rang constantly from unknown numbers, Lena trying to reach me from different phones. But I developed a new skill, ignoring calls that didn't serve me. Mrs. Richter, Ethan said while installing cameras, this system will give you complete peace of mind. You can see from your phone who's approaching your house, even when you're not home. And if anyone enters without permission, an alert automatically goes to the police. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was installing security to protect myself from my own son, but it didn't hurt as much as it should have. It was simply a practical measure to maintain my newfound peace. While they worked, I decided to do something I hadn't done in months, call my sister Diana in Chicago. We'd lost touch because every conversation had become me reporting on how much money I'd spent on Max and Lena, disguised as proud family updates. Renata? Diana answered, surprised. Sister, how are you? We haven't spoken in months. I'm good, Diana. Better than good. I'm calling to tell you I've finally come to my senses. I told her everything. The secret wedding, the humiliation, the lawyer visit, my decision to cut off funding. Diana listened in silence, and when I finished, her response surprised me. Renata, sister, it was about time. Every time we talked, it broke my heart hearing you brag about how much money you gave them, as if love could be measured in dollars. I wanted to say something, but I didn't know how. What did you want to tell me? That Max never spoke lovingly about you at family gatherings? It was always my mom helped me with this, or my mom bought me that, but never I miss my mom, or I love my mom, as if you were a service provider, not a person. Her words hurt, but it was necessary pain. Like when a doctor cleans an infected wound, it hurts, but it's part of healing. You know what else I noticed? Diana continued. Lena always spoke about you in future tense. When Renata's gone, we can remodel her house, or when we inherit. We'll invest in the business, as if they were just waiting for you to die. This revelation hit me hard. They didn't just see me as an ATM, they saw me as a temporary obstacle between them and my money. While I was trying to make them happy, they were planning their future without me, or rather, with my money, but without me. After talking with Diana, I sat in my kitchen processing this information. Years of marriage to a man who truly loved me. 35 years raising my son alone after Robert's death. 3 years financing 2 adults who saw me as a 6-figure obstacle. The doorbell rang. The new cameras showed Eleanor holding a mug. I opened the door and she handed me fresh coffee. I thought you might need company after everything you told me yesterday, she said with a genuine smile. We sat in my living room, and Eleanor shared more details from her own experience. My daughter said exactly what Lena says to you. You're like a second mom to me. We're special to you. Everything will be ours someday anyway. They're rehearsed phrases. Mrs. Richter, They learn them from the emotional manipulation playbook. Does such a playbook actually exist? I asked, half joking. Not officially, but they all seem to read from the same script. Chapter 1, make her feel indispensable. Chapter 2, create constant financial emergencies. Chapter 3, when she resists, question her mental health. We laughed, though it was bitter laughter. Funny and tragic to recognize such predictable patterns in our own children's behavior. Did you ever feel guilty for cutting off the money? I asked. Every single day for the first 3 months, she answered honestly. But then I started seeing results. My daughter got a second job. Her husband stopped playing golf every weekend and found extra work. They learned to live within their means. And most importantly, they learned I was a person, not a resource. That afternoon, I decided to do something I'd postponed for years: visit my husband's grave. I'd always made excuses because Max or Lena needed something urgent, or the taxi fare was better invested in one of their emergencies. The cemetery was quiet and beautiful. Robert's grave looked neglected because I hadn't been there in months to care for it. I sat on the grass beside his headstone and talked to him as if he were alive. Robert, my love, I think I lost myself for a while. After you died, I put all my energy into Max. I wanted to be the best mother in the world, somehow compensating for him growing up without a father. But I think in the process, I forgot to be myself. The wind blew gently, and for a moment, I felt he was listening. Our son has become someone I don't recognize. Or maybe he was always like this, and I didn't want to see it. His wife as well, you can imagine. The money you left so I could live peacefully, I spent it all taking care of them. But not anymore, my love. I've learned. I cleaned his grave, replaced withered flowers with fresh ones, and stayed another hour simply enjoying the peace. For the first time in years, I wasn't rushing home to solve a crisis for Max and Lena. When I got home, there were 3 cars parked in front again. My heart raced, but this time I was prepared. The cameras showed Max, Lena, and 2 other people I didn't recognize, all looking agitated, talking and pointing at my house. I didn't get out of my car. Instead, I called Mr. Weber. Mr. Weber, they're at my house again with more people. What should I do? Don't get out of the car, Mrs. Richter. I'm on my way and I'm calling the police. After our conversation yesterday, I requested a temporary restraining order. They're not allowed on your property. Minutes later, Mr. Weber arrived along with 2 police patrol cars. I watched officers talk to Max and Lena. I saw my son gesticulate angrily. I saw Lena crying again, but this time her tears didn't move me. An officer approached my car. Ma'am, you can get out safely. Your visitors are leaving immediately. As I exited the car, Max shouted from the street. Mom, this is ridiculous. We're your family. You can't call the police on your own son. Max, I replied with surprising calm, family doesn't threaten lawsuits claiming mental incompetence. Family doesn't break into homes without permission. Family doesn't treat their mothers like ATMs. Lena screamed from across the street. You're going to pay us everything you owe. We have bills you co-signed. You can't just abandon us. Mr. Weber interjected. Mrs. Richter, any future communication must go through my office. And I suggest you consult an attorney before making collection threats, because my client has full documentation of all voluntary payments she made over 3 years. I watched them drive away in their cars, defeated but not surrendering. I knew this wasn't over, but for the first time, I felt confident. I had professional help. I had Eleanor's emotional support. And most importantly, I had mental clarity about what was right and wrong. That night, Eleanor invited me to her house for dinner. I met her daughter, who was visiting, and saw with my own eyes what a healthy family relationship looked like. They spoke respectfully, asked sincerely about each other's lives, laughed together. The daughter didn't ask for money once the entire evening. I wanted that with Max too, I confessed to Eleanor after her daughter left. Maybe you'll have it one day, she replied. But first, he has to learn you're a person who deserves respect, not just a source of income. For the first time in weeks, I went to bed feeling hopeful about the future. The next several days were strangely peaceful. The surveillance cameras showed Max and Lena driving past my house multiple times daily, sometimes slowly, sometimes parking briefly, but never getting out. It was like they were studying my routine, looking for the perfect moment for their next move. Mr. Weber had advised me to document every visit, so I kept a detailed log with dates and times. Their persistence will work in our favor, he'd said. Every time they show up after being told not to approach, it strengthens our case for a permanent restraining order. On Friday morning, I was calmly eating breakfast when the doorbell rang. The cameras showed a well-dressed young woman with a folder and a professional smile. I didn't recognize her, but something about her posture told me this wasn't a social visit. "Good morning, Mrs. Renata Richter," she said when I opened the door. "I'm a social investigator from the Office of Senior Services. We've received a report that you may be in an at-risk situation and we need to conduct a wellness check." My blood ran cold. Max and Lena had escalated. This was no longer just threats from private lawyers. Now they'd involved the government. "May I see your identification?" I asked, trying to stay calm. Of course. She showed me official ID that looked genuine. "I'm social worker, Miss Schmidt. May I come in and speak with you?" I let her in, knowing refusal would look worse. Miss Schmidt sat in my living room and took out a form. "Mrs. Richter, we've received reports that you've shown significant changes in financial behavior, cut off communication with family, and displayed signs of paranoia by installing unnecessary security systems. We were told you've refused medical and legal assistance from loved ones." Every word was carefully chosen to make me sound like a mentally disturbed old woman. I recognized Lena's fingerprints on the wording. She'd always been skilled at manipulating words. "Miss Smith," I said with all the dignity I could muster, "I'd like to call my attorney before answering questions." "Ma'am, this isn't a legal interrogation. It's a wellness check. If you have nothing to hide, it shouldn't be a problem to speak with me." The phrase, "if you had nothing to hide," infuriated me. The same logic abusers use to justify invasions of privacy. "Miss Schmidt, I'm calling my lawyer. You can wait here or return another day, but I won't answer questions without legal representation." I called Mr. Weber. He arrived within 20 minutes. When he saw the social worker, his expression hardened. "Miss Schmidt," he said after checking her ID, "I hope you have a court order because my client is under my legal representation, and any unauthorized investigation constitutes harassment." "Sir," Miss Schmidt replied with less confidence, "we have reports from concerned family members about this lady's well-being. It's our duty to investigate." "What family?" Mr. Weber asked sharply. "The same family that tried to coerce her into signing a power of attorney without representation? The same family that broke into her house and reviewed private documents? The same family that excluded her from important events while living off her money?" Mr. Weber placed a folder on the table. "Here's complete documentation of my client's financial and emotional abuse. $33,400 withdrawn from her accounts over 3 years. Systematic social exclusion. Emotional blackmail. If someone needs investigating, it's not my client." Ms. Schmidt reviewed the documents with growing discomfort. Clearly, the information she'd received didn't match the reality before her. "Mrs. Richter," she finally said, "can you explain why you so abruptly stopped supporting your son financially?" "Because I finally discovered they were using me," I replied simply. "I realized I wasn't a mother to them, but a bank account. I was tired of financing people who saw me as an obstacle. But don't you feel responsible for helping your family? The question outraged me. Miss Schmidt, my responsibility as a mother was raising my son until 18, educating him, giving him tools to be an independent adult. My son is 35, married, perfectly capable of supporting himself. Financing his adult life isn't my responsibility. It's a choice. And I've chosen not to anymore. Mr. Weber added, Miss Schmidt, would you consider it normal for a 35-year-old adult to be unable to pay rent without his 71-year-old mother's help? Miss Schmidt didn't answer immediately. I could see her reevaluating everything. Mrs. Richter, she asked, do you manage your own finances completely? I can show you my bank statements, investments, tax payments. Everything's current and in order. Do you live independently? As you can see, I keep my house clean. I care for myself physically. I drive my own car. I have healthy social relationships with neighbors. Do you take any medications? Just vitamins and occasional aspirin. I have no medical conditions requiring medication. Mr. Weber added, my client recently underwent comprehensive medical exams as part of our legal process. She's in perfect mental and physical condition. Miss Schmidt closed her folder. Mrs. Richter, based on this conversation and the documentation I've reviewed, I see no indication you're at risk or need intervention. I'll close this case. After she left, Mr. Weber and I sat in silence for several minutes. Renata, he finally said, this will continue escalating. Max and Lena are spending money. They don't have hiring professionals to have you declared incompetent. Does that mean they're desperate? Exactly. They could file an incompetency lawsuit. It's expensive and hard to win, but if they find a sympathetic judge and a psychiatrist willing to testify, they could get a guardian assigned. The thought terrified me. They could try, but we have solid evidence you're completely competent and they're motivated by greed, not genuine concern. That afternoon, I called Diana to vent. Sister, she said after hearing everything, do you see how far they'll go for money? They're risking family relationships, spending on lawyers and investigators, destroying their reputation all to access your bank account again. Her words made me think. Max and Lena had completely revealed their true nature. There was no going back, no possibility of genuine reconciliation. To them, I'd never been a mother or a respected mother-in-law. I'd always just been money on legs. This revelation, though painful, was also liberating. I no longer had to wonder if I was making the right decision. I no longer had to feel guilty about protecting myself. They'd proven my emotional and physical well-being mattered less to them than my money. That evening, Eleanor came with a surprise. She'd invited friends from her garden club to meet me. Renata, she introduced me. These are my friends, Cynthia, who you know from the salon, Maria, Carmen, and Alfreda. We've all dealt with abusive family members. We spent the evening sharing stories. Maria had set boundaries with a brother who constantly asked for money. Carmen had cut ties with a daughter who only visited when she needed something. Alfreda had changed her will after discovering her grandchildren considered her their retirement plan. What hurts most, I confessed, isn't losing the money I gave them, but realizing I never had the love I thought I had. Renata, Alfreda said with her 80 years of wisdom, true love can't be bought or sold. If you had to pay for it, it was never real. Her words were balm for my wounded soul. She was right. I'd bought attention, not love. I'd financed an illusion. You know what I've discovered? I told my new friends, being lonely surrounded by people who don't love you is worse than being alone by yourself. At least now when I'm alone, I'm in good company. Everyone laughed and we toasted our newfound wisdom. That night, after my friends left, I sat in my garden thinking. The stars shone brighter than ever, or perhaps I was seeing them with clearer eyes. For the first time in my adult life, I was completely financially independent. No obligations to anyone but myself. And instead of scaring me, this reality excited me. I could travel when I wanted, remodel my house, buy nice clothes, donate to meaningful charities, invest in my own future instead of financing ungrateful people's present. Freedom tasted like hope. And for the first time in years, I wanted to plan my future. A month after the social worker's visit, I thought I'd finally won. I'd settled into a beautiful routine calm breakfast, reading the newspaper, tending my garden, lunches with Eleanor or other friends. Afternoons devoted to activities I'd given up years ago. I'd started painting again, something I'd loved before becoming Max and Lena's personal financier, but on a Thursday morning while painting flowers on my new easel, Mr. Weber arrived with a grim expression that made my blood run cold. "Renata, we need to talk. Max and Lena have filed a formal lawsuit for mental incompetence in family court. They're requesting a legal guardian be assigned to you." The words fell like stones. I'd known it was possible, but hearing it made it terrifyingly real. Does that mean they can take control of my money? If a judge determines you're unable to manage your affairs, yes, he could place Max as your legal guardian, giving him full control over your finances. I sat heavily on my sofa, feeling the weight of the deepest betrayal I'd experienced. My own son was trying to legally declare me incompetent to steal my money. Mr. Weber, what evidence could they possibly have? You've seen I'm completely competent. They have statements from 3 witnesses claiming you've behaved erratically. They've submitted unpaid doctor's bills you supposedly didn't pay and medications you supposedly hoarded without taking. But that's a lie. I don't have outstanding doctor's bills or hoarded medications. I know, Renata, that they fabricated convincing evidence. They also have a statement from Dr. Lehman claiming you refuse psychiatric evaluation, which they interpret as proof of mental decline. The manipulation was diabolical. They turned my refusal to undergo an unnecessary exam into proof of mental illness. Used my instinct to protect myself as proof I needed protection. Who are the 3 witnesses? Mr. Weber reviewed his documents. Lena, of course. A neighbor named Mr. Davis, and someone claiming to be your pharmacist. Mr. Davis was the neighbor across the street, an unpleasant man who'd always had problems with me because my friends sometimes parked near his house. Mr. Green was indeed my pharmacist, but I didn't understand what he could have against me. I need to talk to Mr. Green. I told Mr. Weber, something's not right. We went to the pharmacy that afternoon. Mr. Green greeted me surprised and nervous. "Mrs. Richter, it's good to see you. How are you?" "Mr. Green, I was told you signed a statement saying I show erratic behavior with medications." His face turned red. "Mrs. Richter, your daughter-in-law came in weeks ago asking about your medications. She said she was worried because you were acting strangely. What did you tell her?" "I explained you only buy vitamins and occasional aspirin, no regular medical prescriptions. But she insisted this proved you weren't adequately caring for your health." Mr. Weber interjected. "Mr. Green, did you sign a document?" She brought a paper saying I was confirming Mrs. Richter had irregular medication purchases. I thought it was for health insurance or something. I didn't know it was for a lawsuit. My own pharmacist had been tricked into signing something he didn't fully understand. Lena's manipulation knew no bounds. "Mr. Green," I said, "I need you to write a statement explaining exactly what happened and clarifying I have no medication problems." "Of course. Mrs. Richter, I'm terribly sorry for this misunderstanding." After the pharmacy, we confronted Mr. Davis. When we knocked, he answered with obvious hostility. "What do you want?" Mr. Weber said, "I understand you signed a statement about my client's behavior." "Yeah, I did." "That woman's crazy. She's been acting strange for weeks. Can you be more specific about the behaviors you observed? Installing cameras like she lives in a war zone, having strangers visit constantly, yelling at her family in the street. I realized Mr. Davis had taken everything out of context. The cameras were for protection. The strangers were my new friends. The yelling was me defending my house from Max and Lena's invasions. Mr. Davis, I said, do you know why I installed cameras? No, and I don't care. To protect myself from my son and daughter-in-law who broke into my house without permission and threatened me. That's what a crazy person would say, he replied cruelly. There was no reasoning with him. His statement was based on superficial observations maliciously interpreted. That evening, Mr. Weber and I planned our defense. Renata, we need our own psychiatric evaluation. I have a colleague, Dr. Moore, who's an expert in assessing mental capacity. She can officially confirm you're completely competent. What if Max and Lena have bribed the judge? What if none of this matters because they've already decided to declare me incompetent? Renata, the legal system isn't perfect, but it's not completely corrupt. We have solid evidence of your mental competence and their financial motivations. We're going to fight this. The next day, I went to Dr. Moore. She was in her 50s with kind but astute eyes. Mrs. Richter, I'll ask a series of questions and tests to assess your mental capacity. Take your time and answer honestly. For 2 hours, she questioned my memory, reasoning ability, financial understanding, and emotional health. She gave me cognitive tests and asked me to solve mathematical and logical problems. Mrs. Richter, she said at the end, your results are well above average for your age. You're not only mentally competent, but your cognitive function is excellent. Doctor, why do you think my family is doing this? Based on what you've told me and the documents I've reviewed, this seems like a classic case of elder financial exploitation. Unfortunately, it's more common than people think. I left feeling validated, but also sad. Professional confirmation of my mental health was a relief, but it confirmed the lawsuit was real and necessary. That afternoon, Eleanor organized an emergency meeting with our garden club friends. When I told them about the incompetency lawsuit, everyone was outraged. Renata, Maria said, will testify in your favor. We've been with you for weeks, and anyone can see you're doing wonderfully. Better than wonderful, Cynthia added. You're clearer and stronger than many 40-year-old women I know. Alfreda took my hands. Renata, my dear, what your children are doing isn't new. For generations, greedy children have tried to declare parents insane to get their money. But you have something many victims didn't have: documentation, legal support, and friends who can testify for you. Her words gave me hope. I wasn't alone in this fight. I had an army of strong women who'd witnessed my transformation firsthand. You know what's saddest about all this? I said, Max and Lena are willing to destroy any future possibility of reconciliation for money. Even if I were willing to forgive everything, there's no going back from this. Maybe that's for the best, Cynthia replied. At least now you know exactly who they are and can act accordingly. That night, for the first time since this nightmare began, I really cried. Not from sadness, but from grief. I said my final goodbye to the son I thought I had, to the dream of a loving family, to the illusion that unconditional love was reciprocated, but something new emerged within me, an iron determination not to let them strip me of not only my money, but also my dignity and freedom. The war had officially begun, and I was ready to fight. The trial came 3 weeks later. I woke early, put on my best black suit, and looked at myself in the mirror with determination I'd never felt before. Today, not only my mental capacity would be judged, but also my dignity as a person, my right to live free from abuse. My value beyond my bank account. Mr. Weber came at 7 to review our strategy one last time. Renata, remember, the burden of proof is on them. They must prove you're incompetent. We just need to show you're not. What if the judge is already biased? Judge Miller has a reputation for fairness. I researched his past cases. He doesn't automatically favor families. He's dedicated to protecting elderly rights. We arrived at the courthouse at 9. In the hallway, I saw Max in a new suit probably bought for the occasion and Lena dressed in black as if attending a funeral. Maybe it was the funeral of our family relationship. When our eyes met, Max avoided my gaze, but Lena held mine with coldness that confirmed for her. This was just a business transaction. Their lawyer was an older, elegant man with the confidence that comes from winning similar cases before Dot in his opening statement. His strategy was clear: portray me as a confused old woman manipulated by strangers to alienate me from my loving family. Your Honor, he said solemnly, Mrs. Renata Richter has shown clear mental decline in recent months. She's cut off all financial support for her family without rational explanation. She's installed unnecessary security systems due to paranoia and isolated herself from loved ones under the influence of neighbors and lawyers obviously taking advantage of her vulnerable situation. Every word was carefully chosen to make my self-empowerment sound like dementia and my freedom sound like external manipulation. Then they called their witnesses. Lena was first, and her performance was Oscar-worthy. She cried describing how I'd completely changed, become hostile and paranoid, isolated myself from the family that loved me. Your Honor, she said in a trembling voice, Renata has always been like a second mom to me. Seeing her mental decline has been devastating. We just want to help her get the care she needs. Lies wrapped in convincing tears. When Mr. Weber cross-examined her, cracks in her story became visible. Mrs. Richter, can you tell the court when you last called my client without asking for money? Lena stammered. Well, we always talked about many things. Can you give me a specific date? I don't remember exact dates. Is it true you and your husband married without inviting my client? It was a very small ceremony. Is it true when my client asked about the wedding, you told her you'd only invited special people? Lena's face turned red. Those words were taken out of context. What would be the right context for telling your mother-in-law she's not a special person? She couldn't answer convincingly. Max was next. Seeing him on the witness stand, swearing to tell the truth while preparing to lie about my mental health, was one of the most painful moments of my life. This was the boy I'd raised alone, dedicated my entire life to. My mom has always been very generous with us, he testified, but lately she's become erratic and irrational. We believe she's being manipulated by people taking advantage of her. When Mr. Weber cross-examined him, the mask fell completely. Mr. Richter, how much money have you received from your mother in the last 3 years? I don't know the exact amount. Does $33,400 sound about right? Maybe. She's always been generous. How many times have you visited your mother without asking for money? The silence was deafening. Is it true you and your wife broke into my client's house without permission and reviewed her private documents? We were worried about her. Is it true you brought a lawyer to pressure her into signing a power of attorney? We wanted to help her manage her finances. Do you, at 35 years old, need your 71-year-old mother's help to pay your rent? Max couldn't answer with dignity. Mr. Davis testified about my supposed erratic behaviors. But when Mr. Weber asked for details, he admitted he'd never spoken to me directly and all his information was based on superficial observations. Dr. Lehman testified that my refusal to undergo evaluation was proof of mental decline, that Mr. Weber submitted documentation from our evaluation with Dr. Moore, completely refuting his conclusions. Then it was our turn. Mr. Weber first called Mr. Green, my pharmacist. who explained how he'd been tricked into signing a statement that distorted my medication buying habits. Dr. Moore testified about my excellent mental state and presented cognitive test results, which had been flawless. Mr. Summer from the hardware store testified about my mental competence and explained that my decisions to cancel automatic transfers were completely rational and processed correctly. Eleanor and my garden club friends testified about my clarity, newfound vitality, and ability to maintain healthy social relationships. Finally, it was my turn to testify. I stood with dignity and walked to the witness stand, feeling the weight of 71 years of experience, wisdom gained through pain, strength discovered in adversity. Mr. Weber guided me through my testimony, letting me tell my whole story. The $33,400 spent over 3 years, the humiliation of being excluded from the wedding, the constant emotional manipulation, the violation of my privacy, the legal threats. Mrs. Richter, Mr. Weber finally asked, "Why did you decide to stop financially supporting your son and daughter-in-law?" "Because I finally understood that what I was getting from them wasn't love," I replied in a clear, loud voice. It was a commercial transaction disguised as a family relationship. My money was welcome, but I as a person was not. "Do you regret your decision?" "I only regret it took me so long to make it." Max's lawyer tried to make me appear confused during cross-examination, but I answered every question with clarity and precision. When he tried implying my new friendships had manipulated me, I explained that for the first time in years, I had relationships based on mutual respect, not financial interest. In his closing argument, Max's lawyer insisted I was a victim of external manipulation. Mr. Weber's rebuttal was devastating. "Your Honor, what we've seen here is not the case of an incompetent old woman, but of a woman who's finally found strength to free herself from years of financial and emotional abuse. The plaintiffs have presented no real medical evidence of mental incompetence. What they've presented is frustration because their source of income decided to exercise her legal and moral right to protect her own resources." Judge Miller retired to deliberate for 2 hours that felt like 2 years. When he returned, his expression was serious but clear. After reviewing all evidence presented, he began, "It's obvious to this court that Mrs. Renata Richter is in full possession of her mental faculties. Professional psychiatric evaluations confirm her cognitive competence. Her financial decisions, as painful as they may be for her family, are completely rational and within her rights." My heart began beating faster. Furthermore, the judge continued, "Evidence suggests this lawsuit is motivated by financial interest rather than genuine concern for Mrs. Richter's well-being. The court completely denies the request for guardianship. I'd won. Not only the lawsuit, but also my freedom, my dignity, my right to live free from abuse by those who supposedly loved me. When we left the courthouse, I saw Max and Lena talking angrily with their lawyer. Lena gave me a look of pure hatred before walking away. Max looked at me one last time, and for a second I saw something that could have been regret. But it was already too late. That night, Eleanor organized a celebration at my house with all our friends. We toasted to justice, to freedom, to the sisterhood of strong women who support each other. "Renata," Alfreda told me, "today you didn't just win a trial. You won back your life." She was right. For the first time in years, the future was completely mine. I could travel. I could love. I could create. I could live without fear, without guilt, without manipulation. 3 months later, I sold my house and moved to a beautiful apartment near the city center. I donated half my money to organizations that protect the elderly from family abuse. With the other half, I began living the life I'd always wanted. I traveled through Europe, took art classes, joined volunteer groups. I never heard from Max and Lena again. I heard from others they'd had to move to a smaller apartment and that Lena had found a job for the first time in years. Perhaps adversity would teach them what my generosity never could, the value of honest work and independence. Some nights, when I look at the stars from my new balcony, I think about the woman I was a year ago, fearful, manipulated, believing I had to buy love. That woman is dead, and in her place, someone has been born who's understood a fundamental truth. True love never has a price, and freedom is never too expensive. My name is Renata. I'm 72 years old, and I've finally learned that the most important person I have to love and protect is myself.